Hey, Andre.
Hey, Ramos.
Hopefully it's not going to be like last week's language server meeting. Hey, Lena.
Elena.
I think. Andre, are you in Lisbon or no?
No, I returned already.
Oh, okay. How
But
was?
it was a great weekend. I went there for just just the weekend.
Okay. Not many people today.
But the voting was recorded.
Yeah.
How would you call it? Attendance, maybe? 8 people. That's all-time
Nice.
high. I think that I'm going to change the guidelines. I forgot to send the meeting reminder and the voting reminder last week. So I did it yesterday, just day before the voting closed. Hey, John. And I think that that was the right move. I lucked into a better process, because when somebody gets a message like vote now, tomorrow it's not possible anymore, it's better. So my it's not omitment. There is a word. Omitment is not it though. Like the fact that I didn't follow the process actually helped us. So yay me. I'll pat myself on the shoulder. All right, I think that's 3 minutes. That's enough. If somebody joins, they can join in wherever we are at. I'm going to share my whole screen. Welcome to I don't actually know how many of them we have had so far, but quite a bit. 4. So this is eighth TypeScript contributors meeting. Welcome. Let's start with the usual. There is empty agenda except for Elvin's message about types for packages. So let's just start with the vote count. I'm going to quickly try to sum up what the issues are about. You interrupt me if I'm saying something silly or if you have more questions. Hey, Angela. And then we will go to general discussion after we discuss Elvin's point. So, really good voting. We voted the highest for an issue that I created recently. I think that the temporal ordering of the tech debt has something to do with the voting, like only the top or the most recent tech debt issues are the ones that are seen in the huge list of tech debt issues. But that's good, because this one's, in my opinion, really important. I'll click on it. And the issue is that anytime a GraphQL query fails, we get this kind of a log in the extension. It's really annoying when it comes from a customer saying something doesn't work, and you see a few failed GraphQL queries and you have no idea what they are. We have much nicer, if I just go and open, I don't have any failed logs, I think, at the moment, but if I, go away, if I move this thing in here, like we would not only log what exactly the REST path was, but we would also log what came back, like what's the body of the request that came back when it failed. And for GraphQL, we do none of that. So that's this. I think 6 votes. We should schedule it. I'll leave a note in our planning issue for next milestone. Then the next most upvoted was to introduce scope logging, also created very recently. Scope logging into the extension. It's worked really well in the language server. It's nice to see when something says, I received a token. It's nice to know whether it's account service or token refresh service or API service that received the token. We leave it up to the log message itself, which is not always very clear about it. That should be like, I guess this would be a spike with, you know, setting it up for one class or one service. Yeah, go, John.
Yeah, I wanted to generally gauge people's thoughts on using DI to automatically scope. And if that is a generally cool idea or not. So that you would get a logger. So if you ask for a logger with DI, we would use your like symbol description as the scope prefix for your logger.
Sounds good to
I would
me.
like it. Go on, John.
No, that was Angelo. So
Yeah, I just said sounds good to me. Sorry.
okay. Because I was thinking about adding this myself. But I know that it's somewhat of a bigger change, so I'm just wondering, just vibe check while we're talking about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
From my perspective, I would only like if we can come up with an abstraction that kind of makes it a feature, like some kind of callback, you know, something like a dependency injection post-processing middleware or something like that. If I'm going like crazy Java style on it, but you know, like something where it wouldn't be a logger specific feature of the DI framework, but it would be a way how we set up the DI that allows us to manipulate the injected object. But otherwise it sounds great because we do it like we are now doing it in most places in the language server. This issue is from the extension where we don't have any DI yet, but then that's why here it says like in absence of DI, we probably create a logger just with prefix. We'll start using that in the classes so they are like DI ready. But otherwise in language server, I'm all up for it because that would just reduce some of the boilerplate that we do. Sounds
Cool.
good. All right. Review and improve documentation for setting up. I think that Lena, you created this one. Yeah. Could you speak to it?
I think this issue came up like when I was processing dev survey, a TypeScript dev survey that you, Thomas, created, and like many people complain that our dev documentation is not complete, and based on the voting, I assume it's still not complete. So there's someone needs to go through it and like maybe see what's missing there and like connect all the dots. And sometimes people that do not work on our team like reach out directly and they have some issues like setting up the dev environment. So maybe definitely something is missing there.
Yep, I agree to it. And I recently started the file regarding the dev environment setup, so we can continue there. And I plan to add also more regarding the dev-related commands and all. So definitely we can improve in this area. Great that this issue is aborted.
Andrea, I missed, you said recently I started something and I missed what have you started?
Yeah, the files. I've added a little bit regarding the environment setup with MEAs. So there is now a dev environment MD documentation file, both in the LSP and in VS Code repositories.
Gotcha. Yeah. Like I have two problems with this issue, and I don't mean it in any like a, you know, complaining way, but one is that my brain is configured in a way that I know kind of where to touch, so I can't put myself in the shoes of a person who's just newly coming to the systems. And the second problem that's related is that exactly thanks to this, it's hard for me to see the gaps the way how a person sees them when they want to set up something that they haven't set up before. And I wonder how, you know, this issue is very broad. And I wonder, like, when is it going to be done? You know, like in terms of if you like how to scope it. If how would we approach like the end conditions for such an issue? If you have any, because in like my idea is that somebody doesn't know how to do something, they find it and then they improve the documentation. But with that, we end up with the ever increasing documentation because people, especially the people who coming new to the system, are hesitant to go and remove or rewrite 3 sections into one. So we end up with docs bloating up and bloating up. And I don't have a solution. I'm just kind of thinking, if I was to pick this issue, what would I do? Like,
would a super opinionated, like getting started guide that's just step 1, step 2, you could almost blindly follow this guide, and you should have at the end of it, you should be able to run the language server locally. You should be able to have Visual Studio, VS Code, the extension running, and you should be able to have a watch script that's pushing over those changes to VS Code. And if that was that's the end of the guide, is that would get most people, halfway set up, if not, everything they're actually looking for.
Maybe we can like do the recording. Like I remember when I first started, I didn't know like there was like someone wrote like run extension. So I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do to run the extension, but there is like these small buttons that you need to find and click. But I think like I've seen people doing this and they do not know where to click exactly, like so that to run the like the extension development host. So maybe doing like small recording would also help.
yeah, I really like John, what you said gave me an idea. Like I recently, little sidetrack topic. I recently deleted my NeoVim config and started from scratch. And I just created like a folder of the old config for reference. And I'm thinking maybe we could do the same thing for our development setup. Let's just throw away everything we have into /alt, or I don't know, like a legacy, and then start with, as John says, super opinionated, like this is how you get it started, and then just point to the legacy, or like cherry pick the legacy pieces as a separate files for, and when you want to use Chrome for debugging instead of the VS Code, which is the recommended way how to debug language server, this is what you do. Or if you want to set up this edge case, this is what you do. But we would have just one file that's created from scratch. That would make sense. And that would actually be pretty doable, I think, in a reasonable time. All right, then okay. Seems I'm seeing nodding, so I can update the issue with that suggestion. And this is only for language servers, that will reduce the scope even further. And if it works, we can do it for the extension as well. I'll unmute myself. I don't know how I should. All right, so next one. There is a watch script should handle new dependencies. We've all seen that when you introduce a new dependency to a language server, the combination of VS Code extension and language server stops working because the way how we copy the whole language server into node modules makes it so that the npm in extension project doesn't download the dependencies. The workaround now is to use YALC. That works fine. And maybe that's maybe we would have to spike out how difficult it would be to keep our like a custom way of copying around the node module and have the dependencies working. So maybe this would be a spike. I would say that, if it seems like it's going to be week worth for work, I won't say it, week of work for an engineer, then it would not be worth to do it, or like more, or like at least we would. I don't know how much of an issue do you see it as a, I guess the main, yeah, everyone say how much. Tell me how much do you think it's an issue?
only for the first time, like you encounter it, and then you know what to do. Maybe documenting it. That's would be the solution.
I'm pretty used to stopping the watch script and restarting things, so it's not a huge deal for me.
Yep, same.
Yeah, it's just a huge deal when you encounter it the first time because you have no idea what's happening. It can eat like an hour of your time, and you end up with asking in Slack and somebody tells you the answer, but I don't know how to make it more accessible.
Yeah, and it feels fairly. Oh, go ahead, Angela.
I was saying one thing I think we could do, it might be a little bit of a hack, is I'm pretty sure the reason why Yelk solves this issue is it runs npm install when you install that new package. And what's happening is you add a new dependency in the GitLab LSP package JSON. And when that's copied over, ESBuild tries to build it, but the dependency doesn't exist because you haven't installed it, right? So you need to run npm install. So we theoretically could try to read from the package JSONs and then just check if that changed at all. And if it changes at all, then just run npm install. It's kind of a hack, but that's another idea. I can throw that on the issue as well.
Yeah, I see. I know what you mean, and I think that it's right in the sense like that. Yalk creates puts into your package JSON, puts a reference to a different, like it modifies your package JSON and points into the Yalk repository or folder or whatever, and then it does npm install. And because it's like the new dependency in language server is a transitive dependency, it installs it. I'm not sure because we copied the node modules, like the folder with the built language server into the node modules folder. I'm not sure whether the npm install doesn't override it. I don't want to get too technical, but I would be worried that it actually.
I see what you're saying. Like it doesn't override it. It will probably override it because of.
Yeah, that's my experience. That it overrides like it deletes whatever we copied in there and puts there again a fresh version from npm repository or our npm repository.
Why did we move away from Yelk again? Do you guys remember?
It was too slow. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why we did. There is a merge request somewhere, and I think you were saying that it was much faster if we were just copying the not just the language server asset, but also the node modules dependencies.
Well, yeah, I think it was a performance thing, but I think that might not be an issue anymore if we just make it non-blocking, right? I forget how it was. Maybe it was originally blocking and then we separated it out and it just became a non-issue. I'll look into it again, see if we can just move back to Yelk.
Okay. Like if you just leave some comment there on the issue, if you don't resolve it, within a few, like an hour or so.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, and then network errors. This is just maddening. I don't know. I don't understand how it doesn't have more than 3 words, but we just get so many of the proxy timeout issues in language server. It just breaks like every 10th build or something. And it seems like it's saving the failures for the merge train pipeline. So you have to rerun the build to then run the merge train. It's just, I was trying to look at this. I'll open it. I don't have the time. Like I spent maybe 3 hours looking into it. That was about it. I came up with two ways how to reduce the load on the whatever cache is. I actually don't know what's happening there. My original assumption was that, sorry, I'll go to this merge request. My original assumption was that because we are directly downloading, like checking out repositories from GitHub, that we are hitting some rate limiting there when we do it too many times in our CI. But then I went and created, these our GitLab forks, and started using them. And I saw somewhere here, just before I merged this, there was an error that looked exactly the same. And it was already on this merge request. So I didn't have more time to do it again. Maybe we can reopen the merge request and try it. I don't actually know what's happening in there. I think that the cache should fix it partially, because if we have our dependencies cached, then we don't have to do any network calls except for downloading the whole cache from S3. But that's just reducing the amount of times that it's going to happen, but it will keep happening. Don't know. Anyone else have some context to share on this one?
It can be also a problem with the runners because they sometimes just get super slow, and maybe that's when the request is dropped or something like that.
Yeah.
And
In our
this
our
case,
pipeline, are
like,
we
from
able to
our
set
side,
up
really
like
hard to do anything.
better retry logic so that we're not having to just because I think that's just an issue that I've seen across GitLab in general, is that a failure is a failure, and then they go, well, time to rerun the entire pipeline. And is there any way we can capture and retry? And that's my own needing to look into what we can do on the CI side.
We can set up to 3 retries, I think, on any job on the pipeline. The issue is that like this happens blanket wise for all node related, like anything that needs to do npm install, which is almost every job on the pipeline, can have this issue. It's not limited to one. And I would, if we set it up to all, you can set it up as a global, retries 3. But I think that might do something to our CI cost when you have actually every failed job is running 3 times. I don't know. Like maybe it might be the last resort. It would be nice if we have some insight into why this might be happening. But on a merge train, maybe we can say, if it's a merge train, try more, because the cost of failing job on a merge train is much higher. And then last one is build web views in parallel. I think I created the issue, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I was originally assigned to this, and I haven't been able to tackle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this ends up being if I remember correctly, I was looking into how we could do this, and I do think it requires having I'll call it like an intermediate package JSON or something like that, which essentially says, all right, we're having a script that then manually puts in, these are the things to build in parallel. So we'd have to just maintain that sort of build script. We could definitely do that. But that's as far as I got in research on this.
Maybe we could use Mise. Andre is now the resident expert on running Mise builds. So
yeah, I think maybe it can help, but let's see. Yeah, I can have a look.
Is it pronounced Mise? I thought it was Mise.
No, it's actually mise, because apparently
Mise?
the whole thing is called mise en place, so it's some French stuff.
Nice.
yeah, it means in place, right?
Yep.
Like, yeah. All right. There is this note from Elvin that he's planning to start building the language server type definitions, because packages are not included in the final language server types output. And he's asking if anyone has interested if anyone has other ideas before I go down the road of including each package in the root TS config as a project reference.
So I talked with Elwin, and he was planning on using API Extractor. And last time I talked with him, there's a library uh, that will bundle a whole bunch of relevant DTS files into a single one. And I think that the idea was we'll have a single place where we're importing everything we want to export, and then we'll have a bundling step. I think that that makes sense. And I'm kind of wondering from just everyone's perspective, is there anything that we need to include for types besides um, uh, messages and their related definitions that for communication? Um, is there anything else that people aren't going to be using services that are defined, right? They're going to still be communicating off of our JSON RPC, whatever channel that ends up being.
Eventually, I think there might be use for unifying, for example, the format of the API request. Then we have the REST request and the GraphQL request. Those are those were copy pasted from the extension into language server. Then now they diverged slightly, but it would be something that would be nice to reuse. And I personally there is a lot of code in common is being actually running runtime code, not just types. It is included in the extension from language server. So that now the solution kind of was what do you need to share, put it in common. But it would be nice to be able to share something from the packages. But this is dark magic to me. Except for saying the use case, I can't speak to how to export types from a monorepo packages. I have no idea.
So Elwin had found a library that was doing that for him I think as long as he had like an export, a root index essentially for all of our types. And we could just point there and say, okay, now bundle all your types up. And we can always export functionality by just importing from a package and then exporting out, inside of like a barrel file or something like that. So so I think that what he was doing worked real well. I think it is a manual process of determining what needs to be exported from the entirety and what's not. But I think that we expected that anyways. I don't think it makes sense for us to just universally say, hey, every package is fully available.
Yeah, it should be a very explicit thing to do. I agree.
Yeah.
No. Well, this doesn't sound like we had solution ready for Elwin. Yeah. Cool. That's it for the agenda. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to discuss? I think that I just need to search for a merge request that I wanted to show you. Yeah. Resume. Here we go. Merged. I think this is the one. So we were, or Juhi, I'm not taking any credit. Juhi was a little bit realized that it's very complex logic around the quick chat, where you have states like, quick chat is opened, but this happened, you changed the open document, so something has to happen with the quick chat controller. You came back, you opened quick chat elsewhere, you need to close that one and open this one. And it ended up being pretty complex state machine. And Julie in the end introduced, if you've heard about the library, it's called XState. Yeah, so we have that now in main in VS Code. And if you recognize that you have somewhere a state machine, I'll link this into the document as well. I'll put some notes to it later. So if you recognize that you have a state machine problem in your code, that you are getting lost in all different kinds of states, you have now XState available, and consider using it. It is
Nice.
pretty neat.
This is awesome. Would we consider using something like this for chat in general?
I think it would make good sense.
Yeah.
Like having how you call it, formal way of defining what states the chat can be in. Having maybe, you know, the state could be put on context, and then all the UI is like turning on and off based on like, is the chat in this context or not? I think that would make pretty good sense. I
Yeah.
don't know how much of a what approach Juhi took here is that she first created the state machine and just added little hooks into the state machine that are telling the state machine to change states, but it's not doing anything else yet. And the next merge requests are going to slowly move pieces of functionality into the state machine. So this first merge request only introduced like a shadow state machine that's keeping the state but doesn't control anything else about the application. And now parts of the origin logic will be extracted. And I think that's a good approach that like we could do for chat as well.
I could even see this for code suggestions where we kind of have an implicit state machine happening because we've got lots of different I mean, I think Lena, I think you even built out that giant document of here's the state machine, the conceptual state machine of code suggestions. So yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah, for the telemetry, we definitely, like Lena implemented a state machine we have in the language server. All right. Well, unless somebody else has a...
I did have one like topic that's kind of unrelated, but more specific to the language server. If anybody has like 5 minutes, I definitely would like to get y'all's opinion though.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
It's basically TLDR is, I'm wondering if it's makes sense to, so one thing that I met with Enrique and we basically figured out how like a path forward for the web IDE, and Lena's working on that. And one key thing that I learned is that there's no concept of a .git folder. So there's no Git files in the web IDE whenever you launch a project. So that means essentially the repository service that we built doesn't really, as far as like parsing the Git files and getting, Git remotes and whatnot, it's not possible because the files just don't exist. So in order to get any Git information like the remote, etc., you have to essentially query via the LSP endpoint and the VS Code extension all the way to the web IDE extension, the current user's current branch and current commit and all that stuff. So with that being said, I think it would make our lives a lot easier if for all of the regular like Git operations that you would perform on a repository. So we would still keep the repository service, which handles like finding multiple repositories, right? But as far as let's say I need to get the user's current branch, or I need to get the head, or I need to get a diff for something, right? I'm wondering if it makes sense that we like reopen up the issue with security and see if it's possible that we can just call Git directly. I say that because like it is GitLab, and if anything, every machine should have Git. And I was doing research on like simple Git as an example, which is just a wrapper around essentially shelling Git, and they handle any CVEs when it comes to like command injection. So I'm wondering, like, I know the original reason was security, and we didn't want to have to deal with sanitizing the Git inputs. But I think at this point, like, maybe it makes sense to just switch to putting our effort towards calling Git directly whenever we want to perform any Git operations. I don't know. What do you guys think? Tomas, are you going to say something?
Yeah, if it's vetted by security, I think it's like the, reasonable option in terms of how much power for effort we will get from using Git. But I do remember, but this is not like, simple Git is higher abstraction. We
Yeah.
were using in the extension, we were using Execa, and that was a nightmare.
Yeah.
If like a simple Git or whatever other more modern and Git focused library goes through security as, use this, just keep these guidelines whenever you pass in arguments to it. I think it would make our lives much easier. I don't have any issues with that from like an engineering perspective.
What about Execa was giving you guys issue? Was it like that one issue where user could or it would call like the Git shell from the specified folder rather than like the global shell? Was that, I remember that being one issue, but maybe there's more.
Yeah, I fixed about 3 issues. The one I remember the best was that Execa run like a bin, like a binary or whatever shell that was called with the name. Like if you told it to run Git, it first tried to run Git in the current folder, like whatever executable.
Yeah.
That was the biggest one, because you could run anything just on checkout of a repository. But otherwise there were more. I can't remember though.
Okay, if you can find them, that'd be great, because then I'd like to make like an issue to propose it, because I do think isomorphic Git is a little bit limited, and from what I've seen, like even like as an example, yesterday I was trying to, because we're going to need to be able to get which files have changed, right? That's like a basic thing that we need for knowledge graph and probably embeddings as well. In order to get that, I was trying the pure JavaScript way with isomorphic Git, and I just checked out like a simple like Git clone of the main GitLab repository, and isomorphic Git would just fail to parse the Git index and stuff like that. So, and then I just, did more research, and there's definitely like a fair amount of issues when it comes to isomorphic Git, where it's not, handling every edge case. So I'm wondering, like, rather than trying to fix their bugs or work around those bugs, would it make sense to just call Git directly, given that even in the web IDE, if we need anything Git related, we have to call out to the web extension regardless. So yeah, that was like,
Do
that
we
was
have
one.
any concerns working with whatever Git is on the user's path? Because we're dealing with a desktop situation for our side. So
Yeah.
I feel like isomorphic Git gives us a lot of control, whereas just relying on whatever the user has as Git might not be our best bet.
Well, that's the other thing, is we would have to take into account Git versions probably. Like,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm wondering, if simple Git, I need to research if simple Git handles that. Like, I'm assuming they would, right? But you never know.
Yeah. I mean, we could bundle Git.
That was
wanna...
so I saw another library. It's called Node for Git, I think,
Okay.
or Git for Node or something like that. And they have C++ bindings, where you can do all the same operations, which I think calls Git directly via bindings or something. I'm not sure how it works, but the issue with that is then we're going to be into the complexity of bundling every single binary, and then Electron also has specific bindings, I think.
Yeah.
So then we'd have to bundle all of the Electron versions that are available, and then a new Electron version comes out, we'd have to wait for that to be available, and even in order to run it. It's the same thing with SQLite. If we need to do SQLite, that's going to be a really big pain,
Yep.
especially with Electron, the way that we're running the LSP right now, because we just call the bundle directly. We don't actually launch a binary in VS Code. So that was the other option that I saw. But yeah, I don't know. There's definitely trade-offs with all of these approaches.
Mhm.
It just like it doesn't give me confidence that I try to do a basic operation on a freshly checked out repository like GitLab, and
Yeah,
I try
exactly.
to, you know, walk the Git tree, and then it just fails to parse it because of like, you know, it doesn't handle X edge case or whatever.
Yeah.
Just
So
with bundling some extra things into our language server packaging, that has to go through Andre first. He needs to.
yeah,
He spent like a month working with Node 20 native packaging, so like I think that he will have some things to say about it. I'm just gonna
yeah.
add quick thing to it, and shall have a look at the VS Code, like Microsoft's VS Code Git extension, the one that we are actually using in the extension. Like we are accessing all the Git through that extension. They do solve security issues. They had some. I would swear that they have them like somewhere publicly available.
Is it
But
the one that like is on GitHub and it's
yeah,
like in a specific folder?
yes,
Um,
yes, it is this
so
VS Code. VS
is it
Code, and
possible
they
to
have a.
install that? Wouldn't we need to install VS Code directly in the language server?
Ooh, I'm just saying, like for example, for security issue or vulnerability list, check out theirs, because they do use
Okay.
the native. Like here in the Git, they have this.
Mhm.
This is all, you know, like, or not all, but a lot of it is handling just a wrap around the Git binary, and they've
Exactly. Yeah.
for all three systems or major
That's a
operating
lot.
systems, they are finding out how to run it, where to take it. They've had some security issues with it, so this is kind of what we would be looking
Mm,
at if we don't take some more advanced library. And it would be just a good place to start to see what does it take to wrap around the Git binary.
okay.
'Cause
That's a good point.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be really good if we could just install it.
Yeah, I
But
would be worried that it's a little bit too like baked in the VS Code styles and style of coding. But yeah, check it out.
okay. Yeah. I'll see. Yeah, it just needs more research, but we're gonna need some type of solution soon. So yeah, this is really good. I'll add this to the list. Okay, cool. Thank you guys.
All right. We are almost at time. You get 5 minutes back. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.